Now it's time for the last word with the great Lawrence O'Donnell.
Good evening, Rachel. And that's not going to do it for you right now. You just had the biggest interview of the year so far on MSNBC. So, okay, tell us everything that you discussed during the commercial breaks.
I will say I am an awkward person who doesn't get along with people very well writ large. Just as a general thing about me, I'm a hermit. I'm a pineapple who lives under the sea. But I get along really well with Vice President Harris in the sense that I find her easy to talk to. And what that means is that when we're off camera, like when we were in the commercial breaks, the conversation kind of just kept going the way that it was on camera. We were talking about what she was saying about Trump not bringing down prices and the issue about health premiums about to go up and Republicans not having any plans to go along with Trump not having any plans and Democrats needing to be able to articulate that and build up their stars more than they do and that there's so much good talent in the Democratic Party. So it wasn't anything juicier than what you got on the air, but she's really fired up and ready to go. I will say that.
So I haven't read the book, and so that passage that you mentioned that has gotten a lot of controversial coverage, where she talks about Joe Biden making the decision to run for a second term, and then it being up to him in the end to decide not to. And she uses the word recklessness in that passage, and tonight in discussions with you, she includes herself in that recklessness that she's describing. Does that track with the text of the book?
Yes, it does. I mean, what she says is she expresses regret for not having done more to help the White House arrive at the right decision about President Biden's reelection campaign. But she also explains why in the moment and in situ, she didn't feel like she could. She kind of makes the case, like, me of all people, I'm the one person who couldn't say, step aside, old guy, I need to be the one running instead of you. But she's definitely frustrated with the way that ways decisions were made around the president. She doesn't really criticize President Biden himself. She definitely criticizes the team around him. But Lawrence, now that I know that you have not read the book, have you read the part that's about you?
No, I have not.
Do you know this one part? Can I read it to you?
Go ahead.
Okay. It's at page 22. The mythology of America says anyone can grow up to be president, but most people don't think that's really possible for them. Did I grow up as a kid with a dream to be president? No. My mother told me I could be anything, and I believed her, but president wasn't on my list. I was in my first year as a senator before it crossed my mind. Oddly, as a result of a throwaway remark, Doug and I were home in Los Angeles for the weekend having breakfast at a popular hangout in our neighborhood when Lawrence O'Donnell walked in. He wandered up to our table to talk about the dire consequences of a second Trump term. Quote, "You should run for president," he said. I honestly had not thought about it until that moment. The idea took root in my imagination, and as a result of running against Joe for the nomination in 2019, I wound up as his VP. You did it. You were the one who first put the thought in her mind to run for president.
So she reminded me of this in the middle of her presidential campaign, her first campaign, when she was running against that Democratic primary field. And she's reminded me of it a couple of times since then. So here's, now that it's public information, it was really early, because
she was first elected in 2016, so this would have been in 2017. So Trump just having been sworn in.
Yeah, well, so remember, so Kamala Harris is elected to the United States Senate on the same night that Donald Trump was elected president. So all Democrats going into that election day who might think about running for president all thought that was 8 years away. Because Hillary Clinton's going to be president for the next 4 years. She's going to run for re-election. No Democrat has a decision to make for another 6, 7 years, at least. That's the way it was before they started counting votes on Election Day. So I actually saw her very soon after Election Day. on a Saturday morning at that restaurant that she's talking about. And I didn't just barge in to her breakfast. She waved me over, Rachel. I wouldn't, you know me.
She didn't
I'm
make
gonna
you
stay
sound
on
like a
my
creep. She didn't make it sound like, Lawrence
No,
O'Donnell
but here's the great
slinked
thing.
over to us.
Here's the really cool thing in that room, okay? And this is Los Angeles, and she's just been elected to Senate. She has sunglasses on, and she's at the community table because she couldn't get a table for two the way like I could, right? Because they know me. And I really had the feeling, by the way, that in that room, even though she's just been elected senator and everybody in that room voted for her, very few people in that room had any idea who she was, like maybe nobody. And it might have been the sunglasses, but it's also California and their kind of distant relationship to politics, even though they vote for people. And so what I knew was she was going to be under very, very intense pressure very quickly about, are you a candidate for president? And she's in a really weird position. And so what I said to her was, you have to run. And you have to run because the Obama lesson is it's never too early.
Yeah.
And the Biden lesson is there is a second place. You have to run. And I left it at that and left them to their breakfast. And, Joe Biden became vice president by running against Barack Obama for president. Mm-hmm. That is how people have, the Democrats especially, had been picking their running mates, was someone who ran against them. And so, there is a second place in presidential campaigns, and that is the vice presidency. And so that, I think, was, based on the calendar when that happened, I'm pretty sure that was the very first time anyone had said anything to her about that.
That's the way that she describes it, as you being the first person to actually articulate it to her. So, I mean, she was a two-term attorney general at that point. Mm-hmm. The campaign that she ran to become the elected DA in San Francisco was the most cinematic freaking thing you could possibly imagine. Yeah. I mean, she'd been through some really interesting California political wars, but the idea of not just joining the Senate, but then you telling her immediately, no, now you're on the national stage, keep going, don't stop rising, turned out to be a formative thing for her.
Well, listen, if I didn't say it, other people were going to say it down the line. I mean, I knew that. It wasn't something that, I only heard it in one place. And it's just because of the calendar that I was literally the first person to say it to her, I'm sure. And what I was struck by in all those campaigns that you mentioned, Rachel, is, here's somebody who won every campaign that she ran in right up to the United States Senate, and her first setback was in that primary running for president. And so she was a winner in California politics, as you know. She was on this program for the first time when she was San Francisco district attorney, again when she was attorney general. And I remember someone telling me, before I ever knew anything about her, someone in Hollywood telling me about her and talking about her. This was basically black political Hollywood already knew about her. Yeah. And they were talking about her as the term they were using was the female Obama, meaning a black woman who could go all the way, who could go as far as Barack Obama. And then the first time someone brought me to see her speak somewhere, I saw that and I thought, well, yeah, she can absolutely go all the way.
Lawrence, what did you make of, I don't know if you saw it as you were sitting down, but I asked her at the very end, are you going to run for president in 2028?
Yeah.
What did you make of her response?
Well, that was the standard, a computer could have done that response. That's somebody who has not,
but
certainly
she's not
someone
a computer.
who's not.
She has body language and,
right.
Oh,
no, but that's the answer you give when you might and you might not. She absolutely might. That's the answer that says, in effect, I guess the translation for that is, I might. That would be the fair translation of that in American politics. And I'm so glad you asked it. It was one of the things as I was sitting there, and it's the only thing, by the way, because I never, in your interviews, I'm always just living in the interview. And as I was noticing the minutes, though, and I thought, is Rachel going to ask her if she's going to run? And you did. And so thanks for that. And I'm sure that's going to be one of the headlines that you create by that. But Rachel, and by the way, this was, I don't know if it felt this way to you, but certainly for me watching it, this was Vice President Harris at her best. You brought out the best about her, I think, in the way that she took on every one of these questions that you asked, the way she gave each one of your questions a fair response. She wasn't avoiding anything except possibly that last one about, are you going to run for president? It seems very unlikely that at this point her mind would be made up about that. I mean, how do you make your mind up about that without having some infrastructure to base it on? And we know she doesn't have any campaign infrastructure right now.
It is interesting. She's doing this very big book tour. She's doing this 15-city book tour. She says she's structuring it basically to do a lot of listening. Like I think she's eager to get back out into the country and start talking to people and listening to people again to figure out if it's the right thing to do, in part, to figure out if it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, and yeah, this is the way to do it. I think we can remember the Colin Powell book tour, which literally in the 1990s had people lined up around corners, and everyone thought this is the biggest book tour we've ever seen, and it was by far. Everyone thought he is going to run for president, and he didn't in the end. And so I think we'll know when and if she announces. I think it might be hard to tell at any point before that. But Rachel, what else besides page, what is it, 22 about me? What else did you discover in the book that I haven't read that you didn't have time for in the hour?
Oh, there's a lot in it. I mean, the stuff that I'm really focused on, as you know, like I'm not the world's greatest authority on Democratic Party politics. There's definitely a lot on how things work inside the Democratic Party, different Democratic Party capabilities and incapacities, I would say. Certainly she is bordering on caustic when it comes to describing the political operation around President Biden. When President Biden was still running for re-election, she says that the political briefings that were run for the campaign, I think the actual phrase she uses is made no sense to me. She quotes one of her own staffers describing them as a dog and pony show. She's just caustic in terms of whether or not the political operation around President Biden was serving him well. And so that's interesting stuff. And it's important. I think it's important in terms of reckoning with what went wrong and the timing on everything. But I'm really also very interested. I mean, she's, like you said, she was very successful in California politics, brought a really interesting and accomplished resume and history in politics and as a public servant to being a United States senator, which is what she brought to being a vice president. And therefore, I'm kind of interested not just in what she did before, but what her leadership prescription is now. And the other thing about which she is utterly caustic is the way institutions and powerful people have failed the country. Not just, she says Trump's doing what we knew he was going to do and what she told us he was going to do, and she's right about that. What has failed and what has been a surprise are the institutions in our country that we expected more from. And that diagnosis, I think, is really important. And it's important not just as like a caption for what's going on. It's the prescription for what needs to be done to get us out of this mess. We need better institutions. We need better elites. We need better powerful people. And even if the Trump administration reacts to protests by sending in the Marines, Disney doesn't. And the other institutions that we've got that are failing, the law firms don't, right? The universities don't. The other institutions that we've got that are failing are susceptible to public pressure and political pressure, and they ought to be being subjected to more of it because we need them. You can't just do it without them. We need our institutions and our elites to be not capitulating. And so that's the project of the American people who are trying to stand up for our country right now. And her articulating it that way is, to me, just really helpful and clarifying and sort of cuts through a lot of the dross that we're otherwise talking about too much.